everyone. In today's episode of Art in the Garden, we are going to take a household spice, turmeric, and we are going to make a gorgeous alcohol ink and solar dye some yarn. Stay tuned for more information. So the yarn that I use is actually a cotton yarn that you can buy at any big box store. It comes in a smaller, sort of like this size hank ball, and then it comes on this larger cone. I like to work from the cone because it has, I can do more projects with it, and I use cotton yarn for a lot of things. I use it to tie off when I'm tie-dyeing. I crochet with it, I knit with it, I use it to warp my weaving. So I use it a lot, so I tend to just buy the cone. So you take the cone, and it's easier to work off of. So I will put the cone at my feet when I get ready to do this. And the way that you do this sounds really strange. So the way that you're going to do this is you're going to put your yarn in your thumb and kind of hold it there for the first couple of goes around. I usually do this standing up, so it's odd. So you're going to go around your arm. You're going to hold it the other way. You're going to go around your arm. And depending on how you're doing this, you can do this if you are already a knitter or crochet or fiber artist. Usually you will have a yarn swift, and you can do this on your swift. It's easier that way. Or you can do this like in your arm, across your arm, like you are winding a cord up. Or if you have a willing child, a spouse, significant other, parent, you can have them hold their hands like this and then loop the yarn between them. Or you can do it on the back of a chair that has like a ladder back chair. So you're just I'm just making small hanks, so we're gonna call that a day. And when you pull it off, I always have to pull it off and then cut it. So cut it, leave a little space, and you're going to leave this tail a little long, just like this. Like, don't cut it up here, try to cut it down here. That way when you're tying it, you can make sure that you're tied that part in. Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about how you tie your yarn. When I dye my yarn, I tie this into a sort of a hank. If you knit, you get yarn like this sometimes from natural dyers. And so what it is that it's tied in a couple of places. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So you're going to lay your yarn down like this. You're going to give it one twist, making sure that you have all of your yarn. I didn't right there. You're going to give it one twist, put that to the outside, one twist. Then you're going to lay it over like this, okay? You're going to take 4 6-inch pieces of yarn. That's a rough measurement. You just need enough to tie a knot. So we're going to do 4 6-inch pieces of yarn. And I will usually start over here because I can see this better. You're going to go around this one and tie it, cross it twice. Go here, kind of give it a little tug so it's closer to that one. You're not trying to make a resist in the yarn with this. So you just want this tight enough so the yarn stays in place, but not so tight that it would remain white underneath that when I dyed. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. I cross them twice. I go back under this one. And I don't know why, sometimes when I get yarn from dyers, I see it will come with the knot on the inside, and sometimes it comes with a knot on the outside, and sometimes it comes with a knot in the middle. And I'm always really impressed those people who do knot in the middle. So just always make sure that you can tell a clear path between the inside and the outside little loops. Otherwise you'll have a mess. So the reason you do this is if you just wound some yarn up in a ball and dropped it in your dye bath, it would unwind itself and then you would have a mess. You're going to want to, remember I said push that to the end, to the outside? That's because I wanted to know where it was. I wanted to put this knot right over that one so it didn't come undone for me. I have had them come undone in the bath. It's usually not fun. All right. Then you're going to tie another knot. the yarn that I'm using to tie the knots is not replaced. You're just going to have like little bits and pieces of it. You can't reuse it. You could probably use like a, I don't know, maybe a bread tie or something like that. I just use yarn and I put it in a little box. I keep all my ends, but that's what you've got. And so then when you're going to get ready to undo it, I already have some that I dyed with turmeric. You're just going to kind of cut those and pull them out. And now when you pull them out, you notice that I'm taking them apart, because if you pull them out and you don't take them apart like this, you're just going to wad it up and it's going to be bad. You're going to have to spend a hot minute getting knots out. Well, it's always not fun. So this yarn was dyed with turmeric. We're going to talk about it in the turmeric video. It's my sample. And the other reason why you notice that I was holding my fingers apart like that is because I didn't want to cut my yarn. This yarn, not this one. And so then it's just super easy to wind it. I'm not going to wind it because this is still wet. But you can wind it into a ball, and you notice you have something that you can now work from and not a mess. So for today's dyeing project, you're going to need 2 tablespoons of powdered turmeric, which you can find in your spice section, 2 tablespoons of white household vinegar, a mason jar with a lid, 2 cups of water, and some yarn. And make sure that your mason jar will hold the water that you have. Hi again. So you are going to mix the powdered turmeric with your vinegar inside your glass jar. I actually stir it with the spoon this time, with a spatula that I just used for dyeing. You're going to want to set this aside if you use it for dyeing. The vinegar and the turmeric is not bad for you. It's regular white distilled vinegar that you buy in the grocery store, but at some point you might use your dye spatula for something, so it's just better to have one that you don't use for anything else but dyeing. You're going to pull your yarn out that has been soaking in the water. You're just soaking this in water. Turmeric will actually dye this cotton yarn, so you don't need a mordant for anything, and it will stay pretty much the bright color. So I use the same water that I soaked my yarn in just to pour in my jar. You're going to put the lid on it and give it a few shakes just to make sure that everything is mixed together. It's kind of just the easiest way to do it. It's going to make like a slurry. So you're going to still, it's still a little powdery, it's still a little gritty at this point. You're going to remove the lid. And I set my yarn aside because I wanted to test this on my paper first. So with my paintbrush, I got my sketchbook that I use to make notes with, and I just painted into my sketchbook for a minute so that I could see what the color was going to actually be. I don't recommend doing this like this because this is really powdery at this point. If you want to use this for something else, which I'll show you later, you will just, you'll need to strain that to get the powdery substance out. Poke your yarn down inside of it. Be aware, if you don't wear gloves, turmeric will dye your hand briefly. It will come off, but your hand will turn yellow. I wanted to make sure that my yarn had moved around in there fairly well. I put the lid back on it. I gave it a couple of shakes, and I sat it outside for 24 hours. I was a little concerned because it was cloudy the day that I did this, but you'll see that the results were just perfect. So I hinted that I was going to make ink because I checked the color and I really loved that yellow color that I could get. So I have about an ounce of 91% alcohol, and I just poured it into about a tablespoon of turmeric, and I stirred it for a few minutes just to get it so all the turmeric was mixed in. And after I mixed it, I just wanted to make sure that I liked the color before I went any further in the process. So I got some on my brush and I continue to mix it because it's sort of like you can see here that there's a slurry, that it's darker on the edges. That's the powder that hasn't dissolved into the alcohol just yet. So you're going to want to do this, let it sit a few minutes, and I let it sit while I was playing with it. So you can see where it's darker in places, that's actually the turmeric powder. So I wanted to see, just as a test, to see if it would react to the regular alcohol, just the way alcohol inks will also. And so I just put some alcohol, straight alcohol, on my brush and sort of dropped it in. And you can see that it makes the ink go away. It would work much, much better if you were on slicker paper, such as a Yupo paper. And so those dark spots are actually where the turmeric is not mixed in fully. So that's powder that once it dried, it actually will just flake off and leave a white spot, like it just caked on there. So I was pretty happy with these results, and I decided I was going to keep the ink. And so what you're going to need to strain the ink is going to be a small 1-ounce bottle. I ordered mine off of Amazon. They're 1-ounce ink bottles. It comes with a small funnel, and I actually just used a piece of paper towel to funnel that in there. And so all I did was take one layer of paper towel and just sort of like make a coffee filter out of it, just sort of poked it down into that funnel. And it is a very small bottle and funnel. So I knew ahead of time how much ink that little bottle would hold, and that's what I started with, the amount of ink I started with. And you're just going to pour it in there, and you can see when I pour it that there's a lot of powder in the bottom of that. And I just scraped it out and let it sit. It didn't take all that long for it to process all the way through. I just poured the rest of the alcohol through it just to get rid of it, and it would have fit in my bottle. And once it is done straining, I was picking the funnel up so that it would sort of strain a little bit better. You have turmeric alcohol ink to be able to use. Okay, so once I had it fully strained, it probably took 5 or 10 minutes. I picked some up into the eyedropper, and I just wanted to see that the color was clear and there was no more powder into it, and I dropped it onto another page. And I really was pleased with the results. It is the same bright yellow that you see there without all of the powder in there. So I just bottled it up, gave it a little shake, and there is turmeric alcohol ink. So back to our yarn. About 36 hours has passed, and the yarn has just been sitting outside on my parents' deck, and I am pulling it out of the turmeric, and I'm trying to keep as much of the dye bath in there because you can tell that even though the yarn is bright yellow, hardly any of that came out. It didn't exhaust the bath. If it had exhausted the bath, it would be kind of clear. If you are sensitive to things, you probably are going to want to wear gloves. It did stain my hands just a little bit. I am rinsing out the yarn in cool water, and what you see is excess dye leaving the cotton yarn. And so what you're going to want to do is every time you squeeze the yarn, you're going to want to kind of move it to a place, and you can see that I am making sure that the water is clear before I squeeze it again. That's because I want to make sure that you can see the yellow coming out of the cotton yarn. I want to rinse this until it is totally clear. There is no more yellow dye coming out of the yarn, and it takes a couple of minutes to do that. And so once again, you're going to be using cool water. I probably wouldn't do it in a white sink. I have a stainless steel sink. And so you can see that I'm getting pretty clear. And I'm just letting it go straight down. This has been tied into a hank, so it's really, you can see that I'm like making sure that I'm not knotting it up or getting it tangled in any way, because I don't want to unball that like that. And the other thing that you're rinsing this for is the turmeric leaves a little bit of grit on the yarn. And so when you see me moving my fingers apart, I'm actually trying to just get rid of all of the grit that I feel. Dyeing is sort of like a by feel sort of thing. The yarn will feel different if it has a grit in it, and I don't want that sort of for what I'm going to do. So the water is starting to get clear, and I have played around with the yarn, and I don't feel much grit in it whatsoever. And I'm just trying to make sure everything, like all the possible, like where it had been balled up in my hand, I smoothed it back out again, so that I was making sure that every part of that yarn had gotten rinsed out really, really well. And once it is rinsed, you're going to just hang it to dry. You can hang it outside. You can, hang it somewhere where it's safe for it to drip. And then you're going to let it dry. And it was a little humid when I was doing this today, so it took about 36 hours for it to get totally dry. And there is your... Okay, so now we're going to do the project portion of this. I am going to make a small leaf or a feather out of mine. So what you're going to do is, I have my kind of like a little bit longer, double it than the length you want your leaf. I am going to tie a small knot, a little overhand knot in the very top, leaving a little loop at the top. The reason you do this is because when you do the next step, if you don't do this and it's not tied to something, it will absolutely slide off. And I have it, just if you don't have like something like a clipboard to put it down to, then just tape it down. You have about 26-inch-ish pieces of yarn. This is the turmeric yarn that we've been working on all day. And you're going to work in pairs of 2. So you're going to fold one of them in half. You're going to slide it under that base cord. You're going to fold the next one in half. You're going to put it from the underneath to the top through the loop. Then you're going to grab the tails on this end and push them through the loop again. And then you're just going to tighten it up around your cord. I always kind of push it up like that. Give it a tighten. I'm going to tape my other end down. Just so it stops moving. Okay. And you're just going to repeat the same thing. I have seen it where they reverse which one they put underneath and which one they put on top. And I can't tell the difference. And so I don't really think about it. I just kind of put them on there and do this. So you're going to slide them up like that. And then you'll notice that I always just sort of give it a tug.
And the reason I give it a tug is so the knot sort of like tightens up. It's better if you put it in place and then give it the tug, because then you have it where you want it to be and you don't have to like struggle like you just saw me do. So you're going to give it a little tug here, scoot it up into place, long tug. All right. So we're going to do this and fast forward till we get to the very bottom of it so you can see what the finished product is going to look like. Okay, last two. This is kind of a shorter leaf, but leaves are all sort of the same sizes, all sort of different sizes. I don't know if you can hear it raining. It's raining. I'm on my parents' porch, and it's raining where I'm at, so I don't know if you can hear that. All right, so this is what we have. If you taped your end down, untape your end, because this is kind of important. If you just tie a knot here, it won't tie these two together. That doesn't work very well. So take one of these from this side and tie I just kind of tie two overhand knots. That's what I do. And then you're going to take this from the other side and you're going to do two overhand knots. That's more like a square knot, but two knots. And see, and I don't know if we talked about this, but I don't cut mine to size because I kind of like to be able to like look at it and say, oh, that's what my leaf is going to look like this. And then decide how I want to cut it. So I'm going to move it. You can spray this with hairspray and it will poof out, right? Like spray it down like this, or with like some Mod Podge or something. Mine is just sort of like fringy. You're gonna hold it in your hand, find what you think the bottom is. And I like those ones that go like this. And they go like down, and then they go up. And that's kind of probably why I do this leaf like this, because I like that leaf that kind of makes that little heart shape at the bottom. And I honestly just do these on my water bottle because then I can do the like fidget time. Like if I'm waiting for something or I'm waiting for paint to dry or something like that, then I can just sort of fidget with them. And you're not going to leave that long tail like that. Going to kind of cut it off. And then you're going to, some people say to do this with a comb. I'm going to tell you, it's not very effective for me to do that with a comb. And so what you'll see me do is just tear it apart. This will work with macrame cotton It'll work with jute. Like jute is really cool because it's so fat, and when you peel it apart, it makes it really, really fluffy. Like this isn't going to be super fluffy. So I have one finished on my water bottle, and I will show you what that looks like. The one on my water bottle is not trimmed yet. We just left it fluffy. And so it really does look kind of like a tassel like that. It's super cool. And then I'll trim it and it'll look more like a leaf. But I just love the fringe part of it. I love the fringe down. And so it's a great project. If you normally do friendship bracelets on your Hydro Flask, then this is a great project, like a next step to like mix in with them. And you notice that I have on my Hydro Flask, so you would mix them in like this. So on my Hydro Flask, you see that I already have a cord on it. And so I work directly onto that cord. And it turns out super cute. So it's gonna be like that instead. All right.